Welcome everyone back to weekly weather updates, and in today's video now look at the latest from the live radar, run through the weather warnings as we actually have an amber warning issued for rainfall through the next 48 hours, as we are going to see some incredibly heavy rain and persistent rain across parts of western and northern Scotland. You can see on the live radar at the moment it is very isolated across the whole of the British Isles. Pretty much everywhere else is dry, but in this specific region of western Scotland we're going to see a conveyor belt of moisture, and simply it's going to non-stop rain there, probably until Monday morning. Now we'll look at that in detail on the latest UKV, along with having a look at the temperatures over the next 5 days, as we are generally going to see a return to more of a westerly pattern through the early parts of this upcoming working week. However, things are incredibly interesting, or continuing to be incredibly interesting, as we go into the lead up to Christmas. Now, today we're still seeing a massive amount of uncertainty, but overnight it definitely does look like the models have trended colder once again. Both the midnight and the 6 o'clock GFS runs are both showing a really quite potent northerly wind in time for Christmas, and the 6 o'clock GFS actually continues that colder spell all the way towards the new year, and it could actually go into something pretty sustained into the start of 2024. The GM is actually now going for a colder pattern for Christmas as well. Perhaps not quite as sustained as the GFS is going for, but nonetheless, at least 3 or 4 days, really quite cold conditions and the risk of winteriness and maybe even a white Christmas from that. But the ECMWF is having none of it. Instead, it is showing a general pattern that could be conducive of northerly winds, but actually for Christmas Day, the wind is coming in straight from the west. It'd actually be pretty mild, cloudy, potentially even windy as well. And remember, we're only at a lead time of about 8 or 9 days now, which is at the point where we should start to see some more consistency. But no, ECMWF not having any of it this morning. And of course, we'll finish up by having a look at the ensembles, which are, I must say, trending colder, but by no means are they all going cold. There's still quite a big minority going for milder conditions, or at least not cold conditions around average, or for example. So we'll explore all of that in the second half of the video. So do remember, if you enjoy my videos, make sure you like and subscribe, and remember to follow me on Twitter as well. The link's in the description. Now, I said if we start on the live radar, you can see it is a mostly dry picture with higher pressure building in, but the high pressure is not quite extending towards Scotland, and on the edge of the higher pressure, where it with a very strong pressure gradient and a very strong southwesterly wind, we just see a conveyor belt of moisture coming in off the mid-Atlantic. We've seen these patterns, we normally see it maybe a couple of times a year, and right now we're seeing it for western Scotland, and we're seeing some incredibly heavy rain moving in. A lot of it relief rainfall, i.e. where the moisture is getting pushed up over the hills, increasing the rainfall rates, and that's why you can see these brighter colours coinciding with the higher ground here across western and northern Scotland. Eastern Scotland, bone dry, it's going to be in the rain shadow of this system. But western Scotland is going to get smashed by rainfall over the next couple of days, and as I said, it could cause quite significant issues. As I said elsewhere, though, we're not expecting really any rainfall now through much of the weekend, perhaps through into Monday, maybe Sunday night into Monday. This precipitation will start to sink south as the high pressure loses its strength, but shouldn't be anything too heavy at this stage. Now, if you look at the weather warnings, they haven't been updated from yesterday, so if you're interested in looking at them in detail, either check them out for yourself or do check out yesterday's video. But I will just run through the amber warning quickly. Again, persistent heavy rainfall coming into force midnight tonight until midnight on Sunday night, and again, we are looking at potentially 100 to 105 millimetres generally in this amber warning zone, maybe in excess of 200 millimetres in a few spots. That is a ridiculous amount of rainfall, and again could cause significant flooding, not only local flooding but also river flooding in the days following this. Hopefully though, as I said, as we progress towards Christmas, things shouldn't be too bad, but locally here it could be pretty severe in the next 48 hours, so please do stay safe if you are impacted by this. Now, if you go over to the UKV, we'll be able to see this in detail. You can see the rainfall arriving through this morning and continue to be very persistent all day, potentially waning a little bit tonight or shifting northwards, but continued resurgence of this rain through much of tomorrow. This is when the amber warning comes into force, continuing all through tomorrow, and then we could see some rain slowly lingering further southwards through Sunday afternoon into the evening. Again, nothing too heavy, but could become a little bit more widespread into the early hours of Monday before eventually moving away. And then into Tuesday, it looks like we're going to see a low pressure system arrive for southern areas and give quite a horrible deluge through much of Tuesday, perhaps moving away into the latter part of the evening. And then we're going to see lots of showers coming in from the west, winteriness in the north, because we've got a big split here. We've got cold air in the north, mild air in the south, wintry showers over the higher ground, but generally average to above average further southwards, and that's going to continue through much of the week. You see lots of showers, and again pretty typical from a strong unsettled westerly flow. And again, be very interested to see what the UKV shows in the next couple of days as we do progress to the period around that 23rd, 24th of December, where a northerly wind is looking like a real quite possible option from the latest longer range runs. Now, if you look at the max temperatures, you can see through today it's going to be a pretty mild day around the sort of 10 to 11 degree mark, so good few degrees above average. Overnight temperature is not going to drop away all too much at all, staying around 10 or 11 degrees. That's even more exceptional than the daytime temperatures. That is pretty ridiculous, I must say. And into Sunday, again, temperatures perhaps around that sort of 10 to maybe as high as 13, maybe even 14 degrees in a few local areas. Before, as we progress into Monday, it should slowly start to turn slightly cooler through the evening. Still very mild in the day, 10 to 12 degrees, but as said, cooler through the evening as we do see fresher air masses coming in off the Atlantic. And you see for Tuesday, back closer to average, but still pretty slightly above average, around that 6 to 9 degree mark. And that continues into Wednesday as well, perhaps milder air moving in once again, and still generally average to above average into the latter part of the upcoming working week. But as said, into around Friday, Saturday, Sunday, the days immediately leading up to Christmas, it could turn cold very quickly, and that's what we're going to have a look at now. So if we do start on the 6 o'clock run, again we won't have a look at the midnight run, but it was pretty broadly similar. Perhaps not quite as cold, but still cold enough for snow and white Christmas. But as we run through this GFS, you can see westerly winds continue over the next few days, and at this point, come next Thursday, which is where the sort of the UKV gets out to, it doesn't actually look all too cold at all. But we see some very quick amplification of the jet stream, and we see a northwesterly to northerly wind arrive for the 23rd. Into the 24th, it becomes a more direct northerly, and into Christmas, it is a pretty strong northerly wind there. Now, the only thing I'd say about Christmas is, from this latest GFS, the high pressure does topple over, so it would mean that there would be less precipitation around. Wintry showers definitely on the 23rd and 24th, 25th perhaps less so in this sort of pattern with the high pressure toppling in, but it could be really quite cold and frosty, and then eventually beyond that high pressure builds in before eventually bringing milder air in around the 27th or the 28th. But look what happens as we progress towards the new year. A proper block starts to appear towards Greenland, and we see a bitterly cold northerly wind come in. Now, this wouldn't just be a northerly slap lasting 3 or 4 days. This would be a sustained blocked pattern. Could see widespread snow, and look at this huge cold pool heading our way. That could be absolutely freezing there as we progress into the longer term, and you can see this on the potential equivalent temperatures. Absolute freezing cold air heading our way. But of course, that is speculative. That is very much in the longer term. If we do go back to the 25th of December, you can see the -10 isotherms in for Scotland there into northern England. So it is a very cold northerly wind. And if we do zoom in closer to the surface, 6 a.m. it is around freezing, and by the afternoon of the 25th, it is around -1 or -2 degrees. The south still holding up with a bit of cloud, but by the afternoon of Christmas Day, everywhere is below freezing, and it's going to be pretty bitterly cold indeed. And again, the dew points are going to be well below freezing, absolutely freezing cold dew points there into Christmas Day from the latest GFS. Be very interested to see if that comes off, as that would have a really quite potent northerly wind just about coinciding with Christmas Eve through to Boxing Day. Now, the GEM is actually pretty similar. Now, we've got westerly winds over the coming days. Eventually, that northerly or northwesterly wind arrives around the 22nd, 23rd, and becomes direct northerly by Christmas Eve and actually stayed really unsettled even into Christmas Day there. Yes, high pressure is slowly toppling in, but we've got this little polar low, it looks like, exiting out of Iceland. There's a lot of cold air wrapped within it, but also could have quite a lot of snow as that piles in to Scotland there onto Boxing Day. So GM is perhaps even even a little bit more severe for the actual Christmas Day, Boxing Day period, with some heavy snow and very cold air wrapped in with this. Again, you look at the cold pool to our north, it is freezing cold. The only thing I would say is there isn't any major block that's going to hold this pattern in place. So if we could run this on another couple of days, I wouldn't be surprised for this to kind of flatten and go more of a westerly pattern beyond day 10. But regardless, both GFS and GM doing it in slightly different ways would have slightly different outcomes, but both would be cold, potentially very cold, and bringing the risk of winteriness over the immediate Christmas period. If we do compare to the ECMWF though, as I said, this goes incredibly mild actually. We see the westerly wind, and this is where we pretty much get to with all runs into the 21st. We'd think this northwesterly wind has started to come in, but if we watch the low pressure out towards northeast Canada, it actually intensifies quite quickly and doesn't allow a ridge to build towards Greenland. So it pulls in a brief northerly wind, but eventually the westerlies arrive, and for Christmas Day and Boxing Day, it's actually going pretty flat westerly. Yes, from the looks of this, I would probably infer that a northerly wind would arrive on the back edge of this low. From the looks of the synoptic pattern over the Arctic, this area is ready to rush out of the Arctic. So I would expect a northerly wind to arrive after this, but for the immediate Christmas Day and Boxing Day period, it's actually pretty mild. Cold air is very close by, but it's not quite there to push in. So again, very interesting seeing both GFS and GM pretty confident on a colder pattern. ECMWF putting a real spanner in the works. Now, finish by having a look at the ensembles, you can see that yes, the latest GFS is definitely trending for a colder pattern over towards the 24th through to around the 28th. It could go colder earlier, could go colder later, but from the looks of the ensembles, the proper below average period where it's getting down to sort of -4, -5 degrees at 850 XPA for the average is around the 23rd, 24th, all the way out to the 28th, 29th. Yes, though, there are still quite a few milder runs. It is much lower than it was yesterday, but still there, so we can't cut out the milder sort of pattern. You can see the GFS operation run is in the thick of the colder run, so it's pretty much what is being shown from, I'd say, about 2/3 of runs here. And interestingly, precipitation is fairly high as well. Again, not zero, but nothing crazy, but definitely would give the risk of some winteriness. And again, you've got the snow. You can see quite a few snow spikes around the Christmas period. Again, no point looking at this in detail because the synoptics are still not agreed on, but just shows you the risk is there. 2 meter temperatures, big drop through the Christmas period. I'll put that actually on here. You can see the drop is quite significant through Christmas. The average is around the 4 or 5 degree mark now, but again, that's taken into account very cold runs, but equally very mild runs. So again, just giving you an indication that it will be dropping through the Christmas period, just don't know to the extent. And then as said, have a look at the dew points as well, dropping to around the freezing point around that period as well. Again, would give an indication that Arctic air is heading our way. So GFS ensembles definitely indicating a colder pattern, potentially even proper colder spell over the Christmas period, lasting at least 3, maybe 4, 5 days, and GFS even brings it back in time for New Year's. But what is the ECMWF ensemble saying? Now, not a surprise, the ECMWF ensemble members are pretty impartial. There are loads of milder runs here, there are loads of colder runs here, and generally, if we go from around the 23rd onwards, the ensemble mean is pretty much around the 1991-2020 average. It's pretty much a 50-50 split from the ensembles here from the ECMWF. Yesterday they were probably going slightly milder than average. Today they're more around average or slightly below average. So you could argue there is a little bit of a colder trend, but I must say that is clutching at straws really. From the looks of these ensemble members, it is pretty much the ECMWF saying it's a 50-50. and it doesn't really have an exact clue on how it is going to evolve. The operational run is, of course, on the milder end of those. The GFS and GM ensembles would have been on the colder end of these sort of ensemble members. So it is going to be one we are just going to have to see. All I can say, though, is the GFS, the GM operational runs are both pretty adamant on a colder spell, colder snap over Christmas, and the GFS ensembles are definitely trending that way, whereas the ECMWF is still very sceptical and very uncertain. And if we do actually just check out the GM ensembles, which we don't usually have a look at, they are pretty impartial too, but definitely probably more on the cooler trend. Again, we don't normally have a look at these because there's only 20 ensemble members here, so there is not quite as the sort of the breadth of data, but nevertheless still showing the huge amount of uncertainty. So there is the risk of seeing quite a cold, potent spell over Christmas, potentially even quite a lot of snow for northern areas, and even some winteriness further southwards. But it could just simply not happen. We've seen this happen in previous years. Mine goes back to 2021, where we saw a bit of a fail. It kind of fell around the 20th, 21st of December, where we went from potentially a pretty potent cold spell to nothing at all. So there is the risk of that happening, but at this stage, all I can say, all I can speak about is what the models are showing, and all I can do is just say that there is a huge amount of uncertainty, and that pretty much any sort of pattern is on the table here. It could be incredibly stormy and windy from the looks of some of these charts, but equally it could be very cold and potentially very snowy as well. So anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Make sure to stay tuned to the videos over the coming days, as I'm sure we'll continue to have a look at this period leading up to Christmas and over Christmas as well. And yeah, hopefully we'll have a bit more of a more concrete answer over the next few days. So as I said, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you again for another video soon.